Good afternoon. Mary Magdalene can be a confusing figure. Even those of us who don't know much about the Bible have heard about her. But what we think we know about Mary Magdalene has more to do with a sermon preached by a pope in the 6th century than anything we'll find in the Bible or in the historical record. So, let's separate fact from fancy. We call her Magdalene because she came from the town of Magdala, a village on the western shores of the Sea of Galilee. The Bible tells us that Jesus cast 7 demons out of her, and she was one of the women who traveled with Jesus and the 12. Because Luke chapter 8 tells us that these women covered the cost for Jesus' work, it's reasonable for us to think of Mary Magdalene as a woman of means. All 4 Gospels tell us that Mary was the first witness to Jesus' resurrection when she visited the tomb on Easter morning. According to John, she was the only one who did so. There's a very good chance Mary was a prominent leader in the early church, partly because of the time she spent with Jesus during his ministry, and partly because she was an eyewitness to the resurrection. She is mentioned 12 times in the Bible, which is more than most of the apostles. Mary Magdalene was so well known that about 100 years after her death, someone wrote an account of Jesus' ministry and claimed that Mary had been the original author. Now, if you want to make up a fake author for something you write, especially back in those days, you pick someone famous that everyone knows. In the 4th century, the prominent theologian Augustine even called Mary Apostle to the Apostles in his commentary on the Gospel of John. An apostle is someone who bears witness to a personal experience with Jesus. And that's exactly what Mary did when she ran back from the empty tomb to tell the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." But the ancient world was a man's world. The powers that be simply couldn't permit a woman to have a place of prominence, could they? So beginning in the 4th century, church authorities began to suppress women leaders. And that's when the picture of Mary Magdalene started to change. The campaign began to discredit her as a respected hero of the faith. Fast forward a couple hundred years, and in 597, Pope Gregory the Great preached that Mary Magdalene was the anonymous prostitute who anointed Jesus' feet in Luke 7. And for good measure, he claimed that she was the woman caught in adultery in John chapter 8. Now, if you want to discredit someone, calling them a prostitute that people want to kill will do the job quite nicely. And by the time we get to the 20th century, Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice's rock opera Jesus Christ Superstar, and Martin Scorsese's movie The Last Temptation of Christ, and Dan Brown's book The Da Vinci Code each show a romantic love interest between Mary and Jesus. And Mary Magdalene's transformation is complete. She has gone from a prominent church leader to some cheap trash trying to sully Jesus himself. Instead of going along with the myth, it's probably a good idea to stick with the facts. Now, whether Mary Magdalene was a reformed prostitute or someone had demons exorcised from her, she had become a completely different person. Jesus has a way of doing that to people. As he says in John chapter 10, "I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." Before Jesus did whatever he did to Mary, she was technically alive. She ate, she slept, she probably complained about the weather like the rest of us. But her spirit was empty and lifeless. She lived the way she did because it was the only way she knew how to get through life. Many of us today are just like what Mary had been until Jesus touched her. Each of us are unique, so the touch of God's grace upon us is never the same for 2 people. So Mary could tell you what she had experienced. I can tell you what Jesus means to me. And so can the friendly people who knock on your door on a Saturday morning. But your encounter with Jesus and the change that it will bring in your life will be yours and yours alone. Would you pray with me, please? Lord God, we are grateful for Mary Magdalene, for the testimony that she has given to who you are and who we can be because of you. So, Lord, help us to separate fancy from fact. Help us to recognize that this woman is someone we can honor and respect, someone that we can look to in order to understand you better. Amen. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk again later.